Kyle, how you been, man?
Good, man. How you doing?
Super good. It's really good to be reunited. I'm grateful on behalf of me and the NineFold Nation. We are super thankful for you to take some time today to offer us some of your knowledge and expertise on how you've been able to do what you've been able to do with your fantastic career. Just a little bit of like update current events so guys know what's up, and I'm probably going to be talking about this with them anyways as an intro before we show this video. But you've been doing pest control now for 20 years, right? Started in
Full
2001,
one. Yep.
and I guess it's 2020, a little over 20 years. Started in 2001. You started 2 or 3 years before me, and you just sold off your two branches over the course of that career. You transitioned into ownership, and you just sold off the two branches that you had for $100 million as of this morning.
Dude, as of like 5 hours ago, like I checked my bank account and I'm like the luckiest guy in the world, dude. So yeah, it's
Well, I'm
bittersweet,
not
man.
sure
I didn't think I'd
you
be sitting here like done, but I guess I'm kind of done.
you're a made man. You did it.
Yeah, now I can take it to Wendover and see if I can't lose it all in one night.
Put it all
Put
right,
it all in
right,
red.
write it all on red, dude. Red is the one to go for sure. Hey,
Actually, because
so
you don't have to use any of this, but I remember after my first 2 summers, dude, taking all of my money that I had left over and investing in that stupid ticket scheme like Yaya tickets.
oh, I remember that. Yeah,
Dude,
yeah.
I lost everything that I had like worked so hard for my first 2 years, 80 grand. And like, dude, makes me sick even thinking about it. Anyways, you don't have to use that.
Well, I think that's actually really good context because we take setbacks, and it's interesting to hear where you've come from. We're going to get into that in just a second on how your career started. But first, just also a little bit of context for the guys here listening to this. So Kyle Woodbury, back in the day, we were contemporaries. We worked for the same company, Eclipse. He was there before me. I ended up putting in 4 years. Then Eclipse kind of devolved or dissolved, sorry. And you took off with Point, the franchises there in Chicago and DC. You had 2 Point franchises after Eclipse kind of went its way. You were a legend back in the day. So guys nowadays, there's a lot of numbers, you know this, these young bloods coming up that are touting these massive numbers of what they've done for sales. And I'm always way more curious on how they actually got paid because there's this complicity in the industry where the companies want a all-star sales rep so they can recruit off of that and look good and look prestigious, and the kid wants to be an all-star so it makes him look good and feel good and recruit better. And then where the truth is, what really has happened in an industry where everybody's trying to promote themselves to look better than the rest of the competition, where the truth is, like when somebody says they sold 1,000 accounts during the summer, was that with a 40-50% cancellation rate? Did they tack in all the little add-ons as sales? What did they do to get those numbers there? And I'm not saying that's the case across the board, but it certainly is a pretty common theme in the industry that overinflation or kind of overpromising, under-delivering sort of thing happens in this industry. However, when you sold, that wasn't the case. And if I recall correctly, your best summer was 1,100 accounts.
Yeah. So
That
I
was the number one
sold
summer.
in DC, I sold $78 every other month, 546 contract, and that's all we could sell. We sold for Orkin. So
And that was a lot of money back then. So way back, $78 was worth a lot more than it is right now.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think I told you, I just wrote it down. I was trying to figure it out. Here's my numbers. Can you even see that?
Yeah, I can see it really well. So first summer, I'm going to say this, read this off. First summer 2001, you did 300 accounts. 2002, you did 450. You got the markets there where you did them. You stayed in single cities. 2003, you were in Charlotte, for example, at 550. 2004, your fourth summer, threw down 750 accounts. And 2005, you put down 1,100 accounts. And then after the 2005 is when you started your Point franchise. You were 50% owner on that. And you did 650 and then 700 and then 725 in your Point
Yeah,
branches.
give or take some on that. But yeah, so I counted it up. I'm like, dude, I've sold 5,200 accounts. I'm like, that's stupid. That's almost, maybe that's not like something to be proud of. I don't know, man. Like, but that's,
No,
yeah,
it's
5,200
huge.
accounts.
It's huge. And in Byron and I's estimation, we've been in the game for a long time. I've been almost as long as you, and Byron's been in it longer than you. In our estimation, you're the best sales guy that we know. And I think the numbers show that. They bear that out, knocking in a single city, working in those markets that you were assigned to, and getting big numbers and seeing that improvement take place. till you hit that 1100 marker is super impressive, especially back in the day when we used to knock. So here's my first, like, I guess, real question for you that I want the guys here to hear, because everybody here right now at this event has signed on to hit at least 300 accounts plus. And I want guys to have their vision expanded to see what is really possible when you put your mind to something, and to not limit it at just 300, but to say, hey, this is wide open. So your first summer, you did 300 accounts. Now walk me through that, because if I understand correctly, you had a pretty rough start for that first summer. So maybe can you just walk us through
Sure.
what that
I'll
looked
give you
like?
the really condensed version of that. But I played soccer back at BYU Idaho when it was Rick's. I was on their soccer team. But after my mission, I came home and I applied for a job in Boise, and I didn't get the job. I basically got fired like a day after I got the job. So I was scrambling looking for a job, and I ran into my buddy Jared Borg, and him and his brother were going to Richmond, Virginia, and they told me that they would allow me to go with them if I bought a car and recruited 2 technicians. So I did everything in my power to take a loan out from BYU Idaho, and I told them it was for tuition. And then I flew out to Virginia Beach, and I bought a car, and I recruited 2 buddies in my American Heritage class to be technicians. And then I flew out to Virginia Beach and started selling, like, and it sucked. Like, I didn't sell any for 2 weeks.
Wait. So let me understand. You didn't sell a single account for your first 2 weeks.
No, I didn't. And I mean, I know we don't have time for this because this is short. You can cut some of this out, but I still remember like running into gimmies. Like I remember my 3rd or 4th day knocking on a door, and a lady's like, "Oh, great, Orkin, I was going to call you guys today." And I'm like, "Oh, cool." So she's like, "How much is it?" I'm like, "Well, it's $69. She's like, "Great, let's do it." And she's like, "Well," and I'm like, "Yeah, and it's every other month." And she's like, "Well, hold on a second, like $69? And I'm like, "Yeah, that's not even the worst part. We come back 6 more times." That was my line. "That's not even the worst part. We come back 6 more times." I still remember that to this day. And so it's not that I didn't have opportunities. I just wasn't prepared. When I was on my plane trip out to Richmond, I remember thinking that I would be selling bottles of like mosquito spray out of a suitcase. I thought I'd be like walking through swampland selling mosquito spray. So I hadn't done my homework to even know what I was selling, but I was all about it. I'm like, hell yeah, I'll try anything once. I'm like, let's go. But no, I was terrible. Didn't sell
All
any.
right. Because I would say so far, since we've been doing Axis / NineFold, the longest that I've ever seen anybody that I'm aware of in our company go without making a sell was 7 full days, and it was Jared Greiner. And I knew he was working hard. I knew he was putting the time in. You know when guys aren't working hard, they're not selling. It's no surprise. But when a guy's working hard, you expect him to bring in accounts. He worked his butt off for his first 7 days and didn't make a sell, and then ended up having a great summer. You did that for 2 weeks. So how did you ever feel like you were going to quit? You were all in, you hired 2 techs, got a car, fly out there. It's 2 weeks and you haven't made a dime yet before your first sell. Walk us through the psychology of that. How did you get through that?
Well, and I think I told you, like, since I sold my company earlier this morning, it's kind of been like a little bit sad, dude. I went and pulled out my old journal because, the old missionary stuff. And I have like a page from my journal, not even in my journal, but this is just a page I pulled out of my binder and I wrote on it. I won't read the whole thing, but it's like 5/10 of 2001. Most of your guys probably weren't even born yet when I wrote this. It says, "I don't know why I'm sitting here in the shade picking 4-leaf clovers, but I haven't even made a single sell since I started 2 days ago. I really would like to quit and go home and work a normal salary job. However, I can't afford to even do that. Everyone tells me to hang in there and keep trying, but no one's willing to help me get better. Today's my first day with the guy and he's helping me out. I don't think I've ever been this frustrated and unconfident in my life. That's the worst part. I've been working my butt off and my total income is $0.00. Sorry, I missed a spot. The worst thing about this is the fact that I'm unsuccessful. If I was just making a little bit of money, that would be okay. But the problem is I'm not unsuccessful, and and I'm trying so hard. And anyways, it's because I've usually been like successful with stuff in my life. It was so hard, but the fact that I literally spent every dollar just to get there. I remember going to like a thrift store and buying a pot and a spoon, and then like a few bags of those cereal, like the malto meal crap, and then like 4 dozen eggs, and like my last like $5, there was like a cucumber stand on the side of the road, and I bought like 100 cucumbers. Like that's all I had to eat for like 2 weeks. Um, I remember very well, but I don't think I had a choice though. Your question is like, how did I make it? I don't think I had much of a choice, but I will say the things that I did have going for me is I think I had like the work ethic to work. I was still working harder than everybody else in the office. I just wasn't closing sales. And I do feel like, I mean, I wrestled my whole life. I worked on a farm. Selling zero accounts still wasn't the hardest thing I've ever done. I've done things that are way harder than that. It just was mentally tough for me to not make anything. And to see guys that I thought were idiots selling one or two a day, it crushed my confidence. But I don't think I have an answer for you, Adam, of how I did it. I just think that I think growing up, and it's something that I don't think that you can tell somebody when they're going to sell pest control. Like, I think a lot of it's, how are they raised, and do they have the discipline and the ability to endure mentally hard things, which I know is probably not the right answer for you, but I think that's a big one.
No, I think it is. Whatever you say is the right answer. I mean, we're talking to the legend here. So, but it is something that I can relate to. And I've shared this story with my own company, how I sold security and it took me 3 days to get my first sale, which wasn't that long in security. Guys were going a lot longer than that to make their first sale. But I remember feeling like, dude, this is crazy. I've just knocked 3 days and I haven't made any money. And this is the hardest I've ever worked in my entire life. And just having that gut check. And one of the things that I teach these guys all the time, there's 3 qualities to be successful. And you can tell me if you want to add to this or take away or rewrite it, because you are the authority. But I would say the 3 qualities are, one is you have to work hard. Like you said, it's just work ethic. And you worked your way through those first 2 weeks. You worked harder than anybody else in the office. The numbers weren't coming in. You were seeing some of these lesser talented or less guys not working as hard as you, still making sales. But the first thing is work ethic. The second thing is being teachable. Being able to teach yourself, evaluate your approach on the doors, read the training manuals, get yourself leveled up. So that, and then the final thing that you have to have, that's a final ingredient, nobody can teach you this, you just have to decide whether you're going to do it or not, is to have a never say die attitude, or essentially not have a choice. Like, you've made a decision to do something, and it doesn't matter how straight the gate is, how difficult it is, you're going to stay committed to what you said you're going to do. And the universe will take note of that. This has been my experience. They will note when somebody says, I'm going to do this, the universe is going to say, are you really going to do this? Do you have what it takes? And then there seems to be this front load of adversity that comes really hard anytime we set out or we embark on something to level us up, to get us to a better place. There is going to be this immediate adversity for most of us that's going to occur. And we're going to be tested a lot of times at the breaking point to see whether we can make it through that or not. And so I think that story you just shared is relatable to a lot of people. It certainly is with me. So you got out of that. You got past that first 2 weeks, and then you got into a stride, because you ended up selling 300 for that summer, which is good numbers, really good numbers for a first year guy. Maybe walk us through
Until you actually have 40 Clover too.
the one that you were picking out. When you made that journal entry, huh?
But dude, I wanted to go just answer like maybe piggyback, because I don't think that I disagree. I might have a few different things that I believe, but I still think that like they're pretty close. Like, I wrote down what I think they are. Like, I think the number 1 is your work ethic or your discipline. Number 2, confidence. 3, persuasiveness, and 4 is adaptability. But I still think that like some of these can be like, we may not be chasing the same goal here, but I do think work ethic and discipline is still the number 1. I don't know how many guys came out. I remember one year in DC, a guy coming out and working for me, and in his first day he sold like 6, and the second day he sold 4. Like, I've never seen a guy service 6 and 4 their first 2 days. And the third day he didn't, it was drizzling, and he didn't sell any. And he actually drove back to the office. This was in DC. At like 1:30, he came back. He'd only been out for like an hour, and he was quitting. He hadn't sold any for like 2 hours, and he said he couldn't take it anymore. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. You sold 10 in 3 days? You big wuss, And I'm like, I didn't sell any for 2 weeks, and I know a lot of guys that didn't. So I think the work ethic or the discipline, and it's the same thing with life. You give me someone that has the discipline to do something when it's hard, and like, I can promise you they'll be successful in life. Because it's just a matter of like, can you keep doing it? So, anyways, I think work ethic, discipline's the first one. I think confidence is huge. We could talk about that later, but I mean, just being confident with customers when you're talking to them is you cannot know what you're talking about. And if you're confident, you can sell them. And I've seen that. And it drove me crazy. But anyways, and then persuasive. And I think you can teach persuasive a little bit. But I liked what you said, like similar to mine, adaptability. Can you adjust? If you can't make adjustments, it's going to be a long summer. So anyways, I have similar to yours, but that's what I had as my top four.
So frankly, if you can't make adjustments, it's going to be a long life. We talk about, at least for me, resilience or being flexible, being able to deal with whatever life throws at you and work through it as being maybe the most important quality somebody can possess ultimately, because all of their qualities stem from that. And I think this is important for guys that are here right now in this meeting to say, hey, I've set this goal, this high standard for me this summer to do X, Y, and Z, however many accounts that is. You're going to be tested in that, and you have to be able to adapt to those challenges that are going to come your way this summer, and be resilient in the face of setbacks, because setbacks are inevitable, whatever we do. Okay, so let's go through maybe walk us through what you do to prepare for a summer. So when you got into your stride, when you were hitting 700 accounts or 900 accounts or 1,100 accounts in the summertime, how did that look for you in the preseason? What were you doing in terms of training, or did you have goals? Like, walk us through what it is that you did to prepare yourself for these big summers, these really huge, massive summers that broke records, frankly.
Dude, it's some of it sounds really dumb, dude. But my wife would agree. Like my fourth and fifth summer, when I was making $150,000-$200,000, and I was going to BYU. Like my goal wasn't to sell pest control forever. My goal was to just make as much as I could in the summer. And I played soccer at BYU Idaho back when I was like on a scholarship to play there. But I wouldn't stop playing basketball and soccer like a month before the summer started, because I'm like, I can't hurt myself. It sounds so stupid. I almost am embarrassed telling you that, but I was scared. I would have nightmares that like I would be sick or like twist my ankle or something before the summer started, and I wouldn't be able to knock. And I was competitive. Like I was going after, Charlie Miller and Brett Toffer and, Mike Romney and Dave Chappell, like all these guys. Like I knew who I wanted to beat, and it wasn't even just the money. Maybe I shouldn't even say that too, because I feel stupid. I'd rather have like pure motives, but it wasn't even about the money anymore. It was like, I'm pretty quiet. I wouldn't jump up at a training meeting and say, I'm going to kill all you guys. But I would be like secretly saying that to myself. Like, I can't stand you guys. I want to kill you. And so like when you ask what I did to take it seriously, like I think a lot of it was making sure that I was ready to get out there day one. And I didn't take an extra week to get out there. Dude, I wanted to get out there knocking as soon as I could. Because I've said this before, like this is saying that I've said with all my teams for the last 10 years. I'm like, I think that it's about 3-1, man. You can sell about 3 times more sales April, May, and June than you can July and August, dude. And it's just easier. So I'm a big believer in getting a good start, because I've noticed it's easier to finish strong, I feel like, if you start strong. And if guys show up a few days late, even a few days late, I feel like you're behind. You're trying to catch up to guys that have already 10 or 20 or 40 accounts. And mentally, like, you don't sell well when you feel pressure. You sell best when you don't feel pressure. And so this goes on to other tangents, but I think that's another reason why it's so important to get out early in the day, because I'm amazed at how many you can sell when you don't feel pressure. But when you wait, or when things go wrong, you get a flat tire and you don't get on the doors until like 5 o'clock. It's like, dude, it's prime time. It should be the greatest time to sell. But the truth is, when you feel pressured, like that's when you sell the least. So anyways, I know I kind of went off on a tangent that way, but those are the 2 of the things that I did. And then I did go to trainings and some of the preseason events, just so that I could kind of have the rust shaken off when the summer started. So I didn't have to go through the first 3 or 4 days and get the rust off.
I think there's so much in that response that we could dig into, and for the sake of time, we just can't. But a couple of takeaways from this is, one, you were hungry for it. You had a goal in mind. You had that competitive drive already stirred up to, red line before the summer started. I'm going to kill these guys. You might have been quiet about it, but you were like, I'm going out there to be number one. And then you got out there early, not only for the summertime, but on each door. And I think this is one of the most important things. We talk about a cringe test. It's like when you look at your watch in the middle of a knocking day. Are you looking at it and cringing because you still have 5 hours left? Or are you looking at it and cringing because you only got 5 hours left? It's like, I got to get to that next sell. And the guys and girls that really do well at this, they don't take a lot of time to get on the doors, because that's the worst, in my opinion, that's the worst part of the day. That anticipation of going out when you're sitting in your car, you get to your area and you got to get out and knock that first door. To me, that was always the hardest part of the day. And as soon as I started knocking, everything else just kind of went away. All the other distractions, whatever anxieties, everything else faded away. And it was just you and these doors. And as soon as you get a little momentum, you get that monkey off your back. This is one of my takeaways from your comment, is that it really accelerates itself further in that day. So you'll just build upon that. You've got more contacts, you got more names to drop, you got more confidence, like you said, which is essential for doing well. And when you're feeling pressured, you don't have confidence. When you're feeling like behind the power curve, you lack that confidence, that ability to go in and say whatever it is you want to say, and it doesn't really matter because you got that confidence or that magic that people are compelled by, and they can't help themselves but nod. And you know you're kind of in that matrix moment. So I love that. I think there's a lot for us to take away from, and I hope these guys are all taking notes, because this is coming from the guru himself. Let's jump into the summertime. So once the summer started, once the first shots are fired, you get out there, you're hungry to sell. What did that look like for you? What got you to these bigger numbers? What were you doing that made a difference between you and an average rep, or even between you and the next guy in the company that was trying to catch you? What were the differences, or what were you doing in your daily schedule?
My first and second summer, it was just time. Like my first summer, I was still having a good time. Like if I sold, 3 or 4 accounts, sometimes I would quit early. Like I didn't really know. I wasn't really a part of like a scene yet. I didn't know Eclipse was that big. But my second summer after the banquet, and I saw, I'm like, oh, if these guys beat me, like I could have beat them if I would have just worked a few more days. So I would say my second summer, I worked harder. My third and fourth summer, I started to get smarter when it came to pest control. I felt like my first summer or two, I just used very traditional phrases, hey, did you know we were coming by? Or, hey, I'm the route coordinator, just pest control 101. But I think my third, fourth, fifth summer, I really did my homework, and like it's kind of like hunting. Like I scouted out my area, like I knew the type of area that I liked to knock, and I would go and drive around on Sundays to scout area to make sure. Things have changed though with the internet now. You don't have to do nearly the same stuff that we did, but there's nothing worse than waking up in the morning and not knowing where you're gonna go. That sucks, dude. But when you know where you're going to go, and like that when you're done with this neighborhood, you've got these other 3 or 4 neighborhoods that you're stoked to knock in, it takes away some of that pressure. So I spend a lot of time like controlling the things that I can control, knowing that I always had more area, even if someone else had knocked it. It's like it doesn't matter. Like I knew that it was the kind of area that I like to knock. I do think that there's something to be said about that, and if a lot of managers just assign area. But if you know that you like to knock, $2 million homes that are spread out by, an acre apart, tell them. Say, I want to knock this. If you want to knock townhomes, or if you want to knock the stuff that's super tight, tell your manager, because when you're knocking stuff you like to knock, you're definitely more confident. There's nothing worse than getting put in something that you don't want to knock. I shouldn't say that. There's a lot of people that get put in stuff they don't want to knock. But if you do know what you like and what you're successful in, that's helpful. But another thing though was in the back of my car, I used to have like a milk crate, and I would have like extra shoes, extra socks, like Advil, like mouthwash, anything that could go wrong. Just because it's like I didn't want to spend, dude. I never skipped to go. I never watched a movie. I never went to the mall. If it was raining, I was scouting area. Or if it was raining, I'd go knock crap that I didn't think was good area. I'd go knock like ghetto townhomes or ghetto whatever, like the first few years. I kind of stopped doing that, but I would just never waste time. Like, what are you going to get at a movie or at the mall? Like, I'd still rather knock doors 3 hours in the rain and get 1 or 2 than go see a movie. So anyways, like just asking me what I did, I was ready. Like at the end of correlation meeting, like in the morning, I wasn't the last guy out. Like some guys, like they take a morning Duke and they have this ritual, and I have 2 sales by the time they're out to their area. It's like, dude, get out to your area. And the reason why wasn't because I liked knocking doors, but because I wanted to get that first sale out of the way. Because once you get a sale, it's so much easier. You have so much more confidence. And from about 10 to noon or 10 to 1, I didn't feel pressure. Like if people turned me down, I'm like, no big deal. When people turned me down from 7 to 9 and I didn't have any sales, that's when I like started panicking, dude. And you're running around and you sound like an idiot on the doors. But anyways, I like to get out early and I like to have all my stuff ready. I like to have my iPad or my binder ready and just not waste any time, man. Be efficient with your time. But I will also say I wasn't like that my first summer and my second summer. Every summer I got a little bit better at it. And so that's one of the funny things, Adam. Everyone's like, dude, you sold 1,100. Like, that had to be so hard. I'm like, it wasn't hard. I was selling one every 30 minutes. Like, I only talked to 15 people a day, and I sold 11 of them. Like, that's easy. What was really hard was my first summer when I sold one or two or three a day. Like, and I got my butt kicked all day long. Like, but the only reason why I sold 1,100 is because I put myself through my first summer. You can't go to selling 1,100 if you're not willing to endure the hell that's the first summer or two. But anyways, when people say it's so hard, I can't believe you did it. I'm like, dude, that was easy. The hard part was my first and second summer. And so I don't know if that makes sense to you, if you agree with that.
It does. I totally agree with that because as talking about it just a minute ago, how we were saying when you decide to do something, there's going to be this, this has always been my kind of observation that there's going to be this front-loaded adversity to whatever that is you decide to do. In this case, summer sales. So your front-loaded adversity was your first 2 summers, but success breeds success in a myriad of different ways. And so once you start getting into that rhythm, you start knowing, hey, here's the type of area I want to knock. And my manager knows he can trust me because I'm going to go out and perform in this. I've been selling well in this. Now he's going to do what he can to facilitate everything, in my favor to help me get bigger numbers. He's going to help me with that. He's going to get me more tech power. So now I've got better tech power because I'm the one performing it. As you get more and more success, like you said, it's not hard anymore. It becomes like almost a flow, like it accelerates and you start to launch. But you're always tested at first. It always comes with the hard knocks, whether that's your first few weeks or your first summer or your first 2 summers. It's always going to be harder at first. But when you really stay perseverant and you work hard and you're committed to your goals, you do get in this place where it just starts to explode. And now we're looking at you 20 years later, being that kid that was picking a 4-leaf clover, trying to find a 4-leaf clover for a little luck on the doors in 2001, hadn't made a sale in 2 weeks, sitting there writing in his journal, all depressed and sad. And 20 years later, bro, you're selling off your branches and you're walking away, your take, what you got paid. Do you mind if I say to these guys? Your takeaway this morning, what you just had hit your account, was $40 million.
Yeah, I had $40 million sent to my account today.
That hit this morning, closed out. We were talking about this yesterday.
The first person I've talked to really since then. And it's kind of sad, dude. I'm not going to lie. Like, I've done this since like a few days after my mission. This is all I've done. But I don't mean to even hijack what you're saying too, but I love what you're saying. Like, you said that there's always kind of an initial adversity. I used to pitch it a little bit different. I'm like, I think a lot of people see where you're at right now and they say, you're lucky, or I wish I was where you're at. But I believe that you get paid not just based on what you do every day. You kind of get paid for what you did 5 years ago. And not necessarily what you did, but for the effort. The reason why I succeeded my first summer wasn't because of just my first summer. It was because I put in the time 5 years ago, working on a farm, wrestling, doing hard things then. So I was prepared to go through hard things my first summer. Well, my 5th summer, I made $250,000, but it wasn't just because of what I did that year. Like, I couldn't have done it had I have not put in my 5-year previous. And right now I just made $50 million. But it's not because of what I do today. It's because of what I did 10 years ago and 5 years ago and how hard I was willing to work then. So I believe that we get a lot, we get what we deserve, and we get a lot of what we get is because of the effort that we put in 3 or 4 or 5 years ago. So even if you didn't grow up as in the same background that you did or I did, like, start now. Like, just realize that a few years from now, you're going to get paid a big payday. So put in your time now. Anyways, that's one of the things I love to pitch to my young men and my teams is you may not have been a wrestler and whatever. That's what I did. I grew up wrestling and playing sports, but so do it now. Start now.
I think there is so much wisdom in that because And we say this too. I say this to the guys all the time. I'm like, you're going to go out to do summer sales to get paid. Everybody's got bills to pay, so that's why you're going. It's to make some money. And you're going to have all these benefits from it. You're going to make a lot of friends and you're going to have a lot of wild stories to tell. But the most important thing that you're going to take away from summer sales is the journey itself. It's the character development that transpires in the furnace of affliction, so to speak. And that is the gift that keeps on giving for the rest of your life. Whether you do a career of pest control for 20 years and end up, selling it off your branch and walking away with $40 million plus, or whether you go on to a career, you've built up this, you've built up this ability, these skills, this experience from doing summer sales that's invaluable, that does pay you for the rest of your life. And I hear that from a lot of guys. I got a brother that did summer sales with me. He's a lawyer now. I got a brother that's done summer sales with me and he's a doctor now. And both of those guys credit a lot of the success that they have to what they developed in summer sales. My cousin, for example, he's a physician's assistant right now. And he's got great bedside manners, and his dad was telling me how good he is. His dad's a doctor, and he works with his dad. And his dad was like, "My son Thatcher is so good with people that are in the hospital, people he's working with," and he credits all of that to his summer sales experience, how he learned to communicate. So you can see how this gift of the journey itself is what is so valuable to your success wherever it takes you.
Yeah, and no one would ever do that though, based on that. Be like, hey, dude, just
No,
come and work hard because a few years from now you're gonna thank me later.
you got to get
But
paid.
people
We
used to
got
always say
bills.
that even my second and third summer. I remember Jacob Borg and Lenny Gray and geez, Byron would say this. They'd say, hey, even if because they used to get $35 up front, or so. That's it. Remember that? Like 35 or 50 up
Yeah.
front. And Jacob would say, even if that's all I got, that would have been worth it. Like for the skills I learned. And I'm like, whatever, dude. That's like saying area doesn't matter. Like,
Yeah.
then I'm like, yeah, I agree with it now. I mean, because I made 30 grand my first summer. I would still trade that for what I learned in my first summer. Absolutely. I wanted to
100%.
ask you though another couple questions, and you guys can cut this whenever you want. Like I know you try to keep this under a certain amount of time, but I love talking with guys that I really never knocked with. I never knocked with you. I never saw what you did. Like, what do you like? How many summers did you actually knock doors for pest control?
Well, like I was telling you earlier, I did security my first summer, then garbage, and then I did 4 full summers of pest control.
Like what did you get better at? Like what did you like in your 6 years then? What did you think that you got better at as time went on?
Well, I certainly, that's a good question. I didn't come prepared to answer any questions. I was just going to pick your brain, the well of knowledge. There was a lot. I mean, I got better every single year, right? And one of the things I definitely got better at is the first couple of summers, in a lot of ways, were kind of terrifying to me. Like I'm a confident person in general, but I remember just every morning going to bed every night sick to my stomach, waking up every morning sick to my stomach. My phone's blowing up with a number I don't recognize, so somebody's canceling their appointment or it's a tech issue or something, and just like this constant like dread that I carried with me. I remember multiple times I would say my prayers, I still do to this day, in the shower, because I could be private and I could maybe even be a little audible because nobody's there. It's just me in the shower. And so I will have these 30-minute showers in the morning where I'm praying the entire time and sometimes crying. Like I'm
You're
like,
such
Lord,
a
dude,
confident guy too. Like that's so crazy to me to see, to hear that. Like, that, dude, this thing will bring anyone to their knees, dude. My partner used to throw up every day. But in the car, like Jared, he couldn't knock until he would throw up. And I'm like,
my
what
wife.
the hell is wrong with you, dude?
My wife is the same way. Like her first couple of summers, she threw up every day on the way out to area. Like she just had to get the anxiety out of the way. So I think that I became stronger at that. I became more resilient at that, and I learned how to deal with that type of dread. And some people will say, well, I'm not happy here, so therefore this is the indication of why I shouldn't be here. Like you'll hear guys make these excuses when they go out and knock, and like, well, I'm just not happy. I'm just not enjoying it out here. And they think that means they're in the wrong place. And for me, I could tell, even though I was generally unhappy most of my first couple of summers, there's a lot of happy moments, a lot of good times with the guys, and a lot of success stories. But I always thought that's exactly why I needed to be here, is because it is bringing me to my knees. I'm relying on God to get through every single one of these days. I'm relying on God to help me get through any given hour of any given day, because it is so difficult for me. But I learned how to work.
Be like, I'm not happy out here. I shouldn't be here. I'm like, dude, if all we ever did was what was happy, like, geez, I just collect baseball cards and like go fishing. It's like,
Yeah,
man,
and you'd be living in your mom's basement right now, right?
yeah, yes. Like, but you hear that, you hear those lines. It's like, dude, no, like you have to put in the time. There has to be a
Mm.
sacrifice or a struggle. One thing I did want to mention too, though, is I think as I got better, the going from like the 500 to 700 to 1100, um, I think I became a better salesman and I became more confident. And I was able to learn how to try to develop confidence. Because, dude, it's easy to sell when you've already got like 5 or 6 sales that day. But if you could have that same confidence every day, like that's the secret, right? You want to feel like you do when you have like your best day ever, like your 10. Because once you've sold whatever your best day is, or you're, a big number, when you go to the next door, you don't care if they buy or not because you've already sold 10 that day. Um, and so trying to be able to bottle that up or how to create confidence in yourself is another one of the secrets. You said be adaptable, or I said be adaptable. I forgot what you said. Adjust or
Resilience,
something.
adaptable, yeah.
Yeah. But you need to find out for yourself too. Like figure it out. What is it that makes you confident? And I think there's some simple things like make sure you have sleep, make sure you have exercise. Like nothing's worse than not feeling energized because you're eating like crap and you're, getting no sleep and other things. But I think other things too. Like for me to be confident, I needed to really believe in the product and I needed to understand the product. And I know there's people that don't need to understand it. I remember Jordan Hemming, that guy sold 800 accounts
Hmm.
and
I remember.
I'm trying not to make him sound stupid, but he doesn't know the difference between a cricket and a ladybug, you know? And I'm exaggerating a bit, but I remember his first day, him asking like, "Hey, customer asks, is this safe? Is this safe?" And the manager's like, "Yeah, it is." And so that's all he needed. So he went out and he was like, "Absolutely!" Like he'd look at him and he'd say it with so much confidence. And I was the other way around. I'm like, "Why is it safe? Like, what's in the chemicals? Like, I want to know about the molecular structure." And I couldn't tell a customer that it was safe until I understood it. But dude, I have to take responsibility for that then. If that's how I am, then I needed to, and I started going in early in the morning to Orkin to ask them and to read their books until I could come up with a list of 10 things or whatever of why Orkin was better than everyone else. So that when I knocked doors, I could look at people in the eyes and say, like, you won't find anybody that's going to perform a better service for a better price. And so, but it wasn't until my third, fourth, fifth summer that I had that kind of confidence. My first 2 summers, I was just throwing out like, "Hey, trucks in the neighborhood, you want it?" And I was getting some. But when I started getting, 20 sales a day, 15 sales a day, it was when I could look at people and say like, "Dude, you're not going to find anybody to do a better job." And not only that, but I actually started to believe in myself. Like I used to think, like they won't, dude, they're not going to get anybody else to come and do an inspection on their home that knows more about this than me. Like I'm in the top like 0.1% in the United States or in the world to win pest control. And I started to carry myself like that. So that when they'd say, "Well, what's the difference?" I'd say like me, like I'm better than the other people at this. And sometimes I wouldn't say it like that because it's not going to sell people, but that's how I really felt. And I think that was the difference. When you really start to believe in yourself and in what you're doing, that's when you can start to throw down those numbers. And you need to take responsibility for that. You can't just expect your manager to have that confidence. So if you don't have it, then you better have a coming to Jesus with yourself about what you're selling.
Well, and I think that's probably a good note for us to kind of wrap things up with. I think the idea that
Cut that whole part out.
no, I loved it. I loved it. I think it's essential. I think the idea that you
Something
could
we could talk hours about though.
we could go on forever, and I want to piggyback on that for just a second. That idea, and I'm reflecting on my own summers doing this. That idea that you develop confidence, that it's not just something that's God given. Point in fact, point in case, my first couple of summers, I would find myself at various times crying about how hard it was. And I'm not a crier. I mean, it would be me privately with God, just like, "Lord, this is so hard," and just being at these all-time lows. And then just finding as the years passed, a greater level of confidence, a greater level of capacity to deal with things, and then arriving where I'm at now. And it's easy, like you were pointing out earlier, for people who haven't gone through that journey to look at somebody in a place and be like, "Well, they just naturally got it. They just are blessed with that. It's just their skills." And they haven't seen all those valleys that you've passed through to develop yourself into what you are now. They'll look at you and say, "Oh, he just got $40 million. He was just blessed. He just had all the right stuff in place." And they don't realize that for 20 years, you have been doing exactly what you're talking about, developing yourself and improving. And now this is I wouldn't say the finished product because the best is yet to come, but it's where you're at now because of the previous years, like you said earlier, that you've put in. And I want everybody here listening to pay attention to that these moments right now, these times where you're going out and doing summer spells, your first summer, your second summer, your third summer, are so valuable to you. And it's easy to get to miss the woods because of the trees. You know, you get caught up in just what's going on in the daily grind and not to see this bigger picture of what's transpiring in your life and how invaluable these spirit experiences are for you, to be tested to the breaking point, to be broken at times, and to be wading through adversity and to come through on the other side of it better for it. Like that's really kind of like, in my mind, kind of the purpose of life if we're kind of diving into the divine. So in closeout, Kyle, thank you so much for being on this, taking the time out of your busy schedule to share some pearls of wisdom with the NineFold Nation. I can't express enough gratitude for you, and I can't wait to meet up with you next week. We're going to go grab some lunch and catch up. But in closing, I want you to have the last word. Where you're at now, 20 years of career, what are the pearls of wisdom or a pearl of wisdom that you could share with somebody up and coming that's looking at their first summer or maybe their second summer and they got some uncertainty and some fear? What do you tell somebody from 20 years of experience?
I've got a couple of things, but I think one of the things is, like, I've never regretted being bold. You know, I've never regretted trying something new and failing. I've never regretted that. I've regretted not trying. I've regretted that a lot. But that's probably one of the main things. And the world's not going to give you anything that you don't throw your hat in the ring and say, I want to try, give me a chance. And so if you want to be successful, I really do believe that. Like, be ready for failure, but don't ever be afraid to try something. Because like you said earlier, the world is going to try to beat you down and make you think that, you know, that you're a failure. And it seems like the tolerance for failure is becoming smaller and smaller. When I grew up, there was no social media, so nobody knew if I was a failure. It seems like people know pretty quickly, and everyone's embarrassed about that. That if you can't do something successfully and with relative ease, that people are afraid to even try it. Nobody wants to go out and try summer sales and fail, and you know, because I don't know why. It's like a bigger deal now. And so I would just say that, like, I've never regretted being bold. I've never regretted trying something, and don't let anyone else change that. So.
Good note to end on, Kyle. Thank you for being on this podcast. The best of wishes to you and your family, and congratulations, and can't wait to see what this next phase of your life looks like. I know you're going to destroy it, dude, because of what you've developed in these last 20 years. You're going to excel. So thanks for being on here, man, and we'll talk soon.
Take care.
Thank you.